Thank you for having me. I'm very excited for today's conversation.
So I feel like there are like so many areas of like where we can get started for this concept of child rearing and from an attorney's point of view. But I guess, tying it right into you and being a parent of three children, I'm sort of curious regarding from your experience that you've had as a professional dealing with this. How has that sort of had an impact in your personal life from being a parent and obviously giving birth during that time as well?
That's a that's a great question. Um, yeah, that that's actually a really good question. Yeah, my so I'm just a C-section. So baby lawyers, it's in the book. We have C-sections. We're scared of labor. I actually did go into labor, but then I got to the hospital and just one look at the baby's heart rate and they just sectioned
Oh,
me.
wow.
So my labor a little bit easier. And then in terms of how this has impacted me, you know as as a mom, it's hard because I talk to families that have, lost babies or lost mom or baby becomes, permanently injured, after birth. And it's, a lot of times or sometimes or whatnot, it's due to something that could have been prevented or is due to a mistake. So having to interact with the families like this has always weighed heavily on me as a mom. But actually writing this book was complete therapy for me. I didn't realize it at the time or over the years, but I had actually, I think, emotionally suppressed everything of what I was seeing in the cases. And with talking to the family, it's because once I started writing my book, for the first 3 months, I cried
Mm.
every single morning as I went back and I looked at the cases. What can we learn? What can we take from them? I remembered the families where I've been doing this for 20 years. I thought about the families I met, back in February
Wow.
2003. Where are they at now? What's their life like? Did they ever overcome what happened? It was hard. And so basically after crying for 3 months, it was like this clarity, maybe even a weight kind of lifted off me. And it actually, those 3 months then propelled me, into trying to, write the best book I could, to help prevent these mistakes and complications. So, I mean, I've spent
I can
thousands of
imagine.
hours writing this book. It's thousands of hours, 14 months to write. But yes, as a mom and a human, it's a very hard field. But now me, instead of being involved after a mistake, I'm
Mm.
trying to now get involved before childbirth and
It's
hope that I
amazing.
can prevent the mistakes. So it's been a hard road emotionally to see all of this, but I think it helps, that I'm actually kind of trying to get involved, in a different way to, help make sure that families, if you're ready to prepare, I know how to prepare you. So,
Yeah, so
to help you have a healthy
I'm sure there's
baby.
like a very methodical outline for how you went about the writing stuff. Well, I guess, my first question to you is where were you in your career? How far along in your career was it when you started writing this book, and how old were your kids, and how many kids did you have when you started writing this book?
Um, I was
Wow.
19 years in the field. By the time it was published, I was 20 years in the field. I started writing in March 2022. And yeah, I wrote it. So to back up a little bit, it's the introduction to the book, but my niece had a really difficult childbirth, and she was giving birth to the first baby of the next generation. And she had a really hard childbirth, and we went probably about 20 minutes without knowing whether the baby was going to be okay. Um, and I had to, they called me as the attorney, and they're just hysterically crying over the
Oh.
phone, and it was awful. I mean, it was just listening to my sister, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. So I sat outside on my porch and I'm like, I am a childbirth attorney. How am I letting this happen? And it's what had happened to her was very similar to what happens in my cases. I'm like, this is my professional life is unfolding in front of me, and it was awful. And then I'm like,
Right, and you're experiencing it firsthand because of family that you're dealing with. So I think that's like a really good place to, like, dive right into it over here. So what are the things that us parents can be aware of that we're not aware of when it comes to actually going to the hospital for the first time, having your first child? And what are those things that it is that we don't even know that we don't know?
Yeah, it's all in the book, so it'd take me a little bit of time to go through all of that.
Okay.
But what I did is the first chapter are all of the lessons from the baby cases. So I would look at all the cases, looked at all my cases. I'm like, what can everyone learn? What can we learn from the families? What can we learn from the delivery teams? What can we learn from the experts? So that chapter is so important because it does outline for you in each lesson what you need to know to prepare for childbirth. And then each lesson is then a subsequent chapter. So your first lesson is, listen, you need to prepare for childbirth. I get it, new baby, everybody's excited. You get the nursery ready, you buy the cute clothes, the diapers, everything's ready to go. But one of the most important things that parents need to do is prepare. Because a lot of times in these baby cases, families are one decision or minutes from a healthy baby. I mean, they're just I get a new case and I'll watch it unfold. And it's like, no, it's so hard. So understanding that, as a mom and as a parent, you have a big job when you're in labor. Not only are you mentally and physically trying to deliver a baby, but you are the decision maker. Your doctor and nurses and everybody, they're advising you on what to do. But a lot of times in labor and delivery, you may have two options. Which one are you going to pick? Well, if you're not ready for those options, or you haven't thought about childbirth, or you don't have a plan, it makes it where, you're almost like in a different state of mind. Remember, when you're
Right.
in labor, it's the one time it's okay to be in pain. So you're in a bunch of pain. That's going to take you to a different state of mind. And
And
if
then
you
you
get
have to make all these decisions on top of it.
right,
That could be, yeah, really hard.
right. And then where you're medicated on an epidural, and again, in a state of mind where you're trying to deliver a baby and make good decisions, it's hard. So you need to prepare. And I think the families in the cases, it's the first lesson. It's, I think we're all guilty of this. Bad things only happen to other people. And I'll tell you, I will talk to parents and they know so much more about childbirth, in the aftermath of something going wrong. It's incredible. If they would have known this ahead of time, maybe they could have, maybe things would have been different. So it's just getting ready for childbirth. So then that's the first lesson. So then the first chapter on that, where it goes chapter 2, goes over your labor and delivery basics.
Like the
The things
birth
I
plans
rely
and
on
like
is,
the preferences.
yeah, so birth plan is one of the lessons. That's lesson 4. But what I did then is I went and like, this is what you need to know about the basics of childbirth. And it's everything that I rely on as a childbirth attorney when I'm looking at cases, analyzing cases. I do get a lot of calls from people in labor or delivery or at a hospital or pregnancy. Those are always the good stories. Those are the ones that I try to include in the book. But so if I'm talking to somebody, these are the facts that I rely on. And they're different than what you would find in a normal pregnancy book. So, I talk about fetal monitoring. No,
Can you
so
explain
remember,
what that is
the
in
baby's
like a
inside
sentence
you.
or two?
Yeah. So yeah, hold on. So baby's
Okay.
inside you, right? Or, well, you're a guy, but mom, the baby's inside mom, right? So it's hard to figure out, how is baby doing? Mom, remember, there's 2 patients, and like when mom's in labor, you can look at mom, or a doctor can look at mom and be like, ooh, you don't look good, what's wrong, or you're swollen. And then mom can effectively communicate. Doctor makes a diagnosis. Okay, this is what's going to happen, whatnot. A baby's different. So you have the best way to tell if your baby's okay during labor is to look at their heart rate. And that's what fetal monitoring is. Fetal monitoring is looking at the baby's heart rate. And listen, I've been reading babies' heart rates for over 20 years. And I can look at a baby's heart rate and I can tell you if that baby is a rock star and doing great. And I can tell you if that baby is not doing well during labor. So, but, and I had one expert testify that it's the baby's heart rate. That's the way they talk to their doctor. because, the doctor can look at their doctor just like me, and they can look at the heart rate and you're like,
Mm.
ooh, baby's good or baby's bad. So that's really important. Are you going to find how to read a baby's heart rate or what's good or bad about a baby's heart rate in normal pregnancy books? Probably not. But as a parent, I mean, don't you want to know how your baby's doing? So there's lesson one, and then, you would even like the next lesson, your
Right.
delivery team is huge. Those people are.
Is that part of the, I guess we could call like the legal rights of who you want in the room and not in the room, or like if someone is uncomfortable with a certain type of doctor, or let's say a male versus female nurse, does a parent have a right to sort of say something about that, or how they feel, or like what are the parameters when it comes to who when a mother is allowed to say something and when she probably shouldn't say anything?
Oh, in the book, you always say something. Here's the
Okay.
deal. So if you have a nurse that maybe you don't like, and this is literally in the book, because your delivery team is responsible for bringing your baby safely into this world.
Right.
So they have a very important job. If you are not comfortable with someone on your delivery team, you have to get them replaced. And I tell you how to do it in the book. So, for instance, if it's the nurse, um, you got to just request a charge nurse or talk to your doctor. Remember, also, when you're in labor, a doctor has made it themselves available to you where they could drop everything to come deliver the baby. So if you have to,
Right.
call your doctor, get a charge nurse. And here's the deal. A lot of the times, or most of the time, they might already know that you don't have the best nurse, but they can't really do anything about it until you say something. So and
Mm.
this is in the book, but I had a case where two nurses, one was 20 years experience, literally born to be a labor and delivery nurse. The other nurse was very inexperienced. She had just been trained and just figured out she hates labor and delivery. So that nurse,
Wow.
yes. So if you get the nurse that's inexperienced, that hates her job, and she's not doing a good job, listen, they already know. So the born to be nurse cannot stick her head in your room and say, "Hey, if you don't like your nurse, let me know." It
Let
doesn't
me
work
know.
like that. But once you say something, the charge nurse or another nurse, they can do what they do best and help you, because nurses are there like as your advocate to help you. And if you don't have one, and they are very important during labor and delivery. Everyone knows always like the doctor, the doctor. Your nurse is the one by your bedside, right there, communicating with your doctor. If something's wrong, nurse is typically like your first line of communication to your doctor. So they're huge. So you better, if you don't like your nurse, then it's, you just ask for a new one, because from that case, that day with the patients came in, it was luck of the draw. One lucky patient got the very experienced nurse who was amazing, and one unlucky patient got the other nurse. So, you say, if you don't like somebody, say something.
Right.
100%.
Okay. So I when it comes to into like concepts of, let's say, preference of where and how to give birth, whether it's water birth or home birth or natural birth, and then let's say things change just based on how mom's feeling. Are there certain things or maybe certain keywords that mom should be saying in a way that can sort of say, "Hey, I need assistance here. Yeah, I may want things a certain way, but the health of my baby is more important." But sometimes when you're in the middle of something, it could be hard to sort of either uh, verbalize that to your doctor or to your care team, or maybe there is a point where doctors will be like, "Hey, you need a change over here." What are the parents' rights, or what's a mom's rights when it comes to how to deal with that transitions or things that might change in the room during delivery?
Oh, I mean, listen, mom's the decision maker. I mean, doctors and nurses, no one can do anything without mom's permission. They have to have consent for everything. They can't start IVs, they can't do C-sections, start Pitocin, I mean, mom is in complete control, and it's important. Now, of course, I say that, and I'll have, somebody will tell me a horror story where the doctor is like, "No, we're doing this, and you're getting this, and this, and this, and that." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's not really how it works." I go, technically, it's the mom. Mom makes all the decisions in the room, whatever it may be. Those are her decisions, and she, and they will listen to her as long as she voices it. So, and if they don't, Listen, here's the deal. By the time you get to late childbirth, you've been with your doctors for 9 months. So you have 9 months to make sure that you have a good doctor for
Right.
the
Right.
big day. And so, and make sure, and this is, I chapter 4, how to pick the good doctor. I go over, so I've been analyzing doctors for over 20 years. That's a huge part of my job, especially like, okay, can I stick them, in front of a jury? Was a jury going to like them? You name it. Or, how are they in a deposition? How do they make sense? Do they, I have to do a huge doctor analysis with every single
Well,
doctor
when you
that I
say,
meet.
does that make sense? I
So,
think that it could be subjective for what may make sense for you and for your case, as opposed to a new mom that like, does this make sense for me?
mhm.
And then maybe 2, 3, 4 months down the road, be like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm feeling about him. Or, keeps on talking about this vacation coming up. And like, I don't know, I might need someone that I feel like is going to be there for me more. So what can what can a mom do to sort of, maybe I should be changing practices or changing doctors or changing my delivery that I was thinking about doing naturally or doing in water, and now I want to have a full care team and be monitored and be up on the table. Like, how can a mom go about navigating that?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, she doesn't like her. You don't like your doctor. I mean, their doctor again is huge. They're the captain of your delivery team. So they ultimately make the final recommendations. So you need to get a different doctor. Um, and find a different practice. And there's, whether you're going on social media, asking around, um, labor and delivery nurses, if you have access to one of them, they
Okay.
know who the good doctors are
Right.
and who the bad doctors are. Like labor and delivery nurses know so much
Oh
information
yeah,
about
a
doctors.
hundred percent.
Or hey, if you're local here, if you're in Clarkston, Michigan, I can tell you if you have a good doctor. So and then the next thing is, this is in the book, but chapter 6 is, have a plan, and have it all listed and prepare. And listen, are you going to just are you going to be in labor holding your, plan? Probably not, but you've now gone through the process of thinking, looking at your options. I mean, if, they spring the word C-section on you, or they may say, let's just say C-section. They spring C-section on you and you've never thought about that. That element of surprise can
Oh, for
really
sure.
throw you off in your decision making. So you need to think, okay, what if they do offer me a C-section? And if they do offer you a C-section, a lot of times it's because something's off. There's a concern. They usually don't offer everyone C-section. So something's off, something's concerning. What is that? And then on top of that, what's up with the delivery unit that day? Are they really, really busy? Who's going to do, who's going to deliver your baby if you, do choose to go natural? There's so many, just different things to think about, and whatnot. But I would say, yeah, having a plan, and they will listen and they will follow your plan. You have the right to deliver your baby, you know, in whatever way you want. And again, you're the decision maker. The doctor is not going to go, you
Mhm.
must have a C-section. It doesn't work like that. Or we're not going to monitor the baby, or we are going to monitor the baby. Like, they make recommendations. You're the one that's like,
Okay. And I guess moms should be keeping that in mind that, hey, what doctors are saying, it's really
100.
your call. You get to decide. As I'm hearing you talk, Gina, I think the thing that's coming up to me is sort of like what moms need to realize more is that they're the coach of the football
Mhm.
team, and the doctor is more like the quarterback, and they could replace that quarterback anytime they want. And everything that's there, they sort of, the coach makes the decision for what's happening. And even if you're thrown, there has to be an audible last minute. There has to be an audible, but it's still your call, and you get to decide everything that's happening, whether it's from the monitoring to the doctors in the room, the nurses in the room, and
Mhm.
everything else in between. And I think, as parents, if we're able to have that visualization, obviously prepare as much as possible, like all coaches should be, but also realizing that things might come up, and just to be aware of those things, and going through, not only your first chapter, but going through the book, can be beneficial when it comes to knowing what to expect when we're in the birthing table and and that amazing time. Are there certain things that parents can, I guess you could say, prepare for when it comes to, let's say, once the baby's born, and now there's so many other things that come to place regarding, setting up, the parental rights, and who's the father, sending in the right things for a social security card, and birthing papers are the things that parents should be aware of that you've come across in your time that maybe parents don't know about when it comes to setting everything up legally for their new child.
Um, you know, I can speak more from just personal experience. I delivered at
Okay.
hospitals. They're always like, fill this form out, do that,
Right.
But
Right.
really what I
Right.
specialize in is just, always before childbirth. So what
Okay.
basically my job is to look at a care that mom received and baby received during childbirth and figure out what went wrong and why. And not only that, what decisions could have been made so baby, would have been born healthy, or mom would have been around for to raise her baby. So that's my specialty. So after childbirth, that would
Okay.
that I mean, assuming, and that question too would apply, is this a married couple? If you're a married couple and you have a baby, you just fill out, yes, your social security card, or you do what I always just did, whatever the hospitals, okay, sign here, do this. And, when we were getting stuff in the mail. So, but beyond like is there a more specific question with legal rights, like if they're like not, the parents aren't together, or
So yeah, so I was gonna go there next, but
okay.
bring it up. Let's say parents are not together anymore, but want to do things amicably and do it correctly. Are there things that they can sort of know about or prepare for beforehand, or even know about afterwards, for how things should be working when it comes to proper care for this child legally?
Yeah, I mean, basically, when a situation like that, I would always play it on the safer side and just make sure, if it's legally like that, that you get, like, you can go to like the family court, go through the legal system
Okay.
and get orders. The court will order, who's going to have baby, or, certain times. And then, but I would just make sure it's all in a court order, who's paying for baby, where, and whatnot. But yeah, attorneys, and then they can, I would always, because I have heard the stories where they, just have oral agreements, and then there's a disagreement, and then it gets really, really
Yeah,
messy.
very
So even if you
tricky.
guys are
Yeah.
in good terms, it's always good just to head through the court system and just have everything written down as orders, or um, that way there's, no confusion or anything like that. Thanks, I appreciate that. I don't know.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I want to bring it back into your professional wheelhouse, and and just talking, a little bit more. Even though I think the personal experiences that moms bring is, I think, sometimes might even be better than the professional opinions as well. But you are a very specific expert when it comes to child rearing and childbirth. So I want to sort of pick your brain a little bit more on this type of things. We talk about birth-related injuries or malpractice. What are the 2 or 3 questions that parents should be asking? Because I think one of the things that I'm hearing in all your answers that you were giving is asking questions and being curious about what's been going on, and knowing things that's happening around you. So how can parents, or what should they be aware of? How can they stay curious when it comes
Okay,
to the
so
things that they
chapter
need to know when it
11 of
comes
my
to
book
uh,
is
birthing related injuries or
understanding the
malpractices?
10 common facts and issues in a legal baby case. Like, these are the common facts. So, for instance, so you got to remember, all labors are kind of different. So, what you're going to ask is going to be specific to, how are they managing your labor? For instance, the most common fact and the most common issue in a legal baby case, meaning when something went wrong, is Pitocin. Pitocin is a drug that is used to induce mothers by making the uterus contract. So, Pitocin, and when I get a new case in, I typically read the words, mom is being induced with Pitocin. So now we know Pitocin and mistakes can go hand in hand. So asking those very, very important questions about Pitocin and induction are important because I've seen the Pitocin inductions gone wrong since February 2003. So in my book, for instance, I wrote the 14 tips for a safe Pitocin induction, and
Wow.
it would guide parents on exactly what to ask your doctor, your nurse, and it also guide you on what you need to know. Because so Pitocin makes the mom contract. When mom contracts, the baby actually, the oxygen to the baby is pretty much cut off. So baby, every time you contract, and listen, babies are made to handle contractions, and this is very normal. This is nothing that should be alarming. However, when you're inducing the contractions with this drug, Pitocin, it's hard to find the sweet spot. So what happens sometimes is that mom starts contracting too much and it gets really hard on baby because it's just like going underwater for, during a contraction. Imagine baby going, or you are going underwater and you're coming back up. So,
Hmm.
it's very important that, let's go back to fetal monitoring. If there's a contraction, you have to look at the baby's heart rate, and it's going to tell you how baby's handling the Pitocin induction. So, because if you contract, go squeeze baby, baby is not getting the oxygen, baby's heart rate like keeps dropping every time you contract, that means baby doesn't like the Pitocin. Something has to change. So just, so it depends. And then also a huge thing, also, and a common issue or fact in these cases is that the labor and delivery unit is very busy. Remember, like a surgery center where, everybody's scheduled for surgery, 9, 10, 11. No, babies come when babies want to come. And believe it or not, they're busier times of the day when the units are
Right.
busy, like at late mornings, very busy. And also there's in Michigan, we have busy months. So, the May, June, July are like the busy months. So listen, when mistakes happen, a lot of times labor and delivery units are very busy. The delivery team is running hard and they're thin. So you have to have the knowledge base, or somebody with you has to have an understanding of when to notify your doctor if something's wrong. There's a really sad, so that's an important fact in chapter 11. But then I tell, really, it's a very general. It's a sad story, but mom's on labor and delivery, and the unit is just busy. And there were some concerns about the baby. Then they're like, oh, baby's fine. They leave mom and they don't come back for a little bit. And when they come back, the baby's heart rate's not graphing anymore. And they're like, then they can't get the heart rate at all. And they're like, so they pull in the ultrasound, and they check, and the baby actually had passed away in the delivery room. If mom and her family was in the room, mom was there, if they would have known how important that baby's heart rate was, and there were concerns. So when it stopped graphing, they should have been out
Wow.
there getting somebody to help them. Because listen, the delivery team's running hard and they're running thin, but listen, they're going to, if your baby's in trouble, they're going to be there and they're going to move as fast as they can, but they have to know. If they don't know, then they may be, doing a C-section on a mom that stalled out in labor. Her baby's fine. She stalled out in labor. They're gonna go to the baby that's in trouble first if they know. So it's the book is also too, it's like it's working with your delivery team, because they're not just sitting there next to you the whole time. It doesn't work like that. They have other patients. So it's, if you know certain things, then you can alert
Sure.
them. And and it's, again, this stuff's not like, rating a baby's heart rate is not rocket science. But I don't know why medical community seems to be fine with leaving it to the doctors and nurses. But even if you just understand some basics, will really help you make good decisions, will really help you work with your delivery team, and it'll help you understand what your delivery team's saying. So, I would say those two things are probably important. I also, another big one, a common factor issue. So mistakes happen after the water breaks. So you have a bag of water, baby is nice and comfy and everything's fine. But when your water breaks, it changes the environment, it changes baby's environment, and it makes them more vulnerable to something happening. So if your doctor is like, hey, I'd like to break your water, the answer is not, okay, you ask a question. Why do you want to break my water? Do you want to be home for dinner, or is there a medical reason you want to break my water? Like, which one? Tell me. So yeah, asking questions is important. But then, once you read my book, you understand that, asking those, it guides you, because I wrote the book for my kids. That's ultimately the story, my niece's story, the ending of that. The baby is fine, but it made me realize, like, oh my gosh, I may not be around for my grandkids. Like, I couldn't imagine my kids going into labor without me. So I'm like, my kids need to know what I know. So it's basically, I would sit down like every day, like I was writing this to my kids. So yes, here's a common fact, here's a common issue, and here's how to make sure. I give the tips on how to make sure if this happens in your labor, you go mistake free. This is what you need to know. So I may identify something, but I always solve the problem.
I love it. I love it. And it sounds like one of those things that should be like required reading for deeply committed
I,
couples. So for both spouses to know, because sometimes if mom is feeling a certain way and her brain is in a place based on where her body is, the partner should be very aware of what's happening and know all the legal rights and know everything that's happening to their partner's body and where they're going and where they're having the delivery and who's in the room, and knowing those things as well. And I think, like you're saying, having that open communication and also having a a game plan for what to expect in the room before everything that from you talk about, like the heart rate and the heartbeat and what the monitor is. I just remember being in the hospital and just seeing this, like, little, like a teeny little pen going up and down, up and down, up and down, and I'm like, oh, what is that? And I'm like, oh, okay, it's the heart rate. Like, I had no idea what that even was. And never getting any medical training. It took a little bit of experience and being curious to be aware of what that device is, and hearing from you how vital it is, not just to the situation, but obviously to the baby itself forever, and also for mom, for what's happening to her. And her body is going to respond based on what's happening to that baby and that baby's heart rate. So the people that are in the room, whoever's in the room with the mother giving birth at the time, to be able to know, hey, look out for these things. And if you're in a more populated area where the hospitals are going to be a little fuller, I've been fortunate living in a small town here in Connecticut. It wasn't that crazy every single time we went to the hospital. So, but it was something that we were aware of, and obviously, like, another big tip I think you said before that I wanted to circle back at for a second over here is, if you know a delivery nurse, or if there's someone out there that has a little more, I guess, say, connections when it comes to something like this, whether it's someone that has given birth and has gone through something not necessarily traumatic, but something in a way they can share their experience. Which, I think you were saying before, even going on social media and looking for someone that has been a a child rearing nurse of some sort, and just being able to hear from them, hey, these are the things that you should be looking out for, because this is your rights, these are the questions you should be asking about. Make sure your doctor does A, B, and C. Make sure he's not wearing his football jersey underneath his scrubs because he has to run out to a game afterwards. Just to be aware of those things that we might not think about as new parents. I think it'd be really, really insightful and helpful, both in the short term, but obviously also in the long term, as people are going through this, what could be and what should be an amazing and beautiful, momentous time in parents' lives, whether it's your first child or fifth child. So it's really something that we can be more prepared for, and we should be more prepared for. You talk about your book, and it sounds like something that should be required reading in many ways for anyone thinking about having a child, or maybe someone that just found out that they're going to be having a child soon. Are there other resources or places where, yeah, you would like to send people to, that or you would tell your children about, that, like, hey, get more information from here, because you can learn more about this whole process. And obviously, not everyone has a mom like you at home where they can get all this information from. So, what would be some of those places or options where they can get some information?
Right. So, actually, they can go on my website. That's going to be, I'm building that out to have some resources for parents with some really good information that they need to know that is not in the book. The book was huge. The book's actually been divided into two. And the first book is what I have out now, A Parent's Guide to a Safer Childbirth. And that's all childbirth, and then I'll have a pregnancy. And then I also started a childbirth blog. So, like, I
Mm.
published a thing yesterday, and it's like, not in my labor, said the childbirth attorney, and it's just, you need to adopt that mentality, not in my
Right.
labor. But in order to be able to say that, you got to know what you're talking about, right? So,
Right.
and that just stems, it's an article I wrote, but stemmed, it's a quick read, and it stemmed from this conversation with an expert, because we were hashing out labor and delivery and what happened in this case. And he just looks at me and he's like, would you have been okay if this was your labor? And I was like, no, if it wouldn't have
Right.
happened to me, if it was my labor, I'm like, no, I would know this would never happen in mine. And it was like,
Where is this
oh,
blog? Where can people find this article?
just go on my website, ginamundy.com,
Okay.
GINAMUNDY.com. I assume it'll be in your show notes too.
Yes, we'll be in the
But
show
yeah,
notes, and it
childbirth
sounds,
blog,
yeah,
like,
very
but
very very necessary.
and then I wrote before that how to make good decisions during pregnancy and childbirth, where I tell them, listen, if you have a decision, this is how what you need to ask your doctor. This is very important. Are there two schools of thought on this issue? Ask your doctor that, because doctors like to give opinions, but it's really important to understand that in childbirth there are so many different opinions. I will hire two OBGYN doctors to look at a case, and one doctor will tell me everything was done perfectly, and another one will tell me everything was done wrong. I traveled the country. When I first started in the field, I would ask the doctors, I'm like, how come you guys are an exact opposite opinions? How is this possible? Like, I just didn't understand. But it's good for parents to know this. So, are there two schools of thought? And the doctor, is there maybe another route I could take in my pregnancy that maybe you don't agree with, but I'd like to hear it and let me decide. And then the doctor should give you two schools of thought, and then based upon their training and education and experience, they should make a recommendation. And then also, I give you in that article, like, what OBGYNs read. So you can go to like PubMed,
MED.
PUBMED, or med, yeah, and look up different articles. And then a lot of times they will have like plain language. If you don't know, if it's a little advanced, they'll have like a plain language one that you can read. And just read what the doctors are reading.
Yeah.
And then ACOG will have recommendations. I always look at ACOG recommendations. We use that literature a lot. ACOG, American College of Obstetricians and
Yeah.
Gynecologists.
That's a good one, actually.
But I'll use.
That's a very good one, actually. I think we should add that to the show notes, because I know I've got information from there as well. So I think that's something that parents should
Mhm.
be at least be aware of. And so my last question for you on this topic of being curious, and I think that's the overall theme, is be curious, and you have control, you have rights, a lot more than you could even think of. And I think that's the theme
Mhm.
of what you've been talking about today, Gina. Is yeah, there are many things that we don't know, that we don't even know when it comes to child rearing, but look, and stay curious, and through that you'll be able to be much more prepared, as you go into this amazing time in your life. My last question for you on this topic of preparing as much as possible, if God forbid there is a situation and people need to hire some sort of attorney besides for going to ginamundy.com, I'm curious, when it comes to choosing legal representatives, when it comes to uh, malpractice type issues or other things that might come up in the birthing room, what can parents be looking for? What type of questions should they be asking when it comes to hiring the proper legal professionals in this type of situation?
Right. I'll tell you, there are some really good attorneys out there, and there are some really bad attorneys out there. And there's some that are in the middle. Um, you want, obviously, you want the best, because, these cases really can go in any direction. So, like, if something did happen during labor and delivery and you did need to seek an attorney, it would be very important that you talk to an attorney where childbirth cases is all they do. That's
Okay.
huge. So, because I've had cases where a plaintiff's attorney, and the other attorney does not understand the case. and he gets the case completely wrong. Um, so you gotta understand, or make sure
This
that
is
they're
their
specialized,
professional,
because
right,
there
work.
is like there's other attorneys that may specialize. They may do more emergency medicine, orthopedics. So whatever the issue, just make sure the attorney specializes in that. And if they do, just it's hard. You got to kind of look around or ask around, because there's some childbirth case attorneys. They know what they're doing. They've done this a long time. But would I trust them with a case? Hmm. There's some that I wouldn't. So it's hard. It just
So what
depends
would
on
be
the
a
person. But
question that you would
you should
ask
get
if you're searching for one? Like, what would you ask that attorney? Like, that would make you feel more comfortable?
how How long have you been practicing is huge. I mean, you need that experience. And then do you
Mm,
specialize? Do you specialize in baby cases?
okay.
So that would be how long, and do you specialize in cases? You could ask them how many cases, they maybe
Mm.
take to trial, or baby cases are hard because, it's, those are more difficult. But yeah, I think experience and specialty is a really good start. And then just like anything else, you got to get that warm, fuzzy feeling from your
Trust
attorney
your
that they're
gut.
going to do a good job. And you're just going to have to rely on your instincts and your intuition a little bit. And then ask around as much as you can. I definitely would take, the approach of asking somebody. That's because you're going and as long as they
Right.
actually know and they
Yeah.
know what they're
Okay.
talking
Well,
about, you're
this has
good.
been, it's such a wealth of information that I think we've gained from here. And obviously people should be checking out ginamundy.com, which we will have in the show notes. And don't forget to check out her book as well, A Parent's Guide to Safer Childbirth. Gina, as we finish up here, I like throwing a few rapid fire questions. So if you could share one, I know it's not really that rapid fire, but if you could share one cute, embarrassing, but yet shareable story that might have happened to you as a parent, in like short abbreviated version of it, what would that be?
So I have teenage daughters who tend to just get really upset for no reason. And we used to respond to it by saying, pulling their phone, doing whatever. Now I treat the teenage girls as if they're bank robbers when they are very emotionally unstable. Because think about it, a bank robber, right? And I'm like the negotiator, and the bank robber has hostages, and I need him to release the hostages, right? So I'm going to use negotiation tactics to calm the bank robber down to release the hostages because we don't want anyone to die. But I'm not going to call the bank robber and say, hey, you probably need to go to bed earlier. You need to stay off social media. Put your phone down. You're not going to say that. So, no life lessons to the bank robber. So we scale our kids, right? So when they're really mad, we say, okay, they have like 15 hostages. Okay, 15 hostages is bad. Okay, so then it's actually been a funny way for my husband and I to communicate. He'll come home and I'll be like, hey, Abby's at about 7 to 8 hostages, and he's like, oh, great,
Love it.
and then that's fine. And then we do like midnight DJ voice, like,
Right.
hey, is everything okay? And or maybe we mirror them, so we're like, are you mad? Or we mirror them. Whatever they say, we just repeat what they say, and
Oh, I
then they
love
keep
that.
talking. And then, or we'll label it like, or are you mad because of something that happened at school? And they'll be
Got
like,
it.
no. And they'll be like, the other sibling made me mad, so then maybe we label it, and then we basically try to get them
Oh,
to
I love that tip.
release their
That's great.
hostages.
That's great.
So I almost want to write a book on it. It is so funny. And they calm down, and it has turned, I had a really hard relationship with my, she's now 19, and we started
Right.
doing this when she was like, I don't know, I think 16. Our relationship was awful. So we just learned, treat them like bank robbers when they're just emotionally unstable for no reason, bring them down to reality. And, and so that's I don't know. That's something funny. I'm like, we treat our kids like bank robbers.
That's amazing. No, that's amazing. I love it, and I'm hopefully by your next book that you could use that as an example of treating kids like bank robbers. That's a really great title. But on that topic of books, I'm curious if there's a book out there that you've read that's been beneficial to you, either into your field when it comes to this parenting aspect of things, or maybe as a parent. Has there been something that you've read that you like to share with us?
Rich Dad Poor Dad. Yeah, I know.
Oh
I've
yes,
read that a couple times,
yeah,
and
oh
then
yeah, yeah.
you know another good book I was surprised by this was Matthew McConaughey's Green Light. That one I've listened to that
Green
one.
lights.
I drive a
Yeah.
lot, so I've listened
Okay.
to that one twice. He killed it on the audio book, but just more like inspiration
Amazing.
and how he started. I like to
Okay.
hear those stories. And then I think
Yeah.
because in
That's
my
really good.
field, it's with Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm 40, almost 48, and but it's hard to be out there litigating, and so so if you've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, you know what I mean. It might be more beneficial to have
Yes.
more
Yeah. And you know what?
passive type incomes.
Thank you for reminding me of that book, because I think that's a really good one to put into the show notes and to add to to where I share information as well, because I think that one could go so far regarding what we could learn for ourselves and obviously for our families as well. My last question to you today, Gina, is if you can think of a everyday mundane superpower that you would like to help with your parenting skills, what would that be and why?
I don't know if this directly answers it, but I think what helps me in parenting skills is literally I start every day off working out, and it's somehow it dec. I'm not cranky then. I'm not. So I don't know. I with parenting, a huge part of parenting for me is like that mental sanity, especially with the teenage girls. So
So what's the
the
superpower?
superpower, just getting up early and working out is the superpower. Like just, and then that
Got
just
it.
will help ground you. And that helps. So if I don't work out, my kids know. So if that makes any sense, like they like, oh my gosh, mom didn't work out today. She's really cranky. She has hostages.
Mm, yeah, makes perfect sense. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Got it. Okay, so I guess a superpower of more self care can be very beneficial. Beneficial. But Gina, thank you so much for your help today. I'm going to